Iran has taken a dramatic step against one of its most prominent opposition figures. The Iranian authorities have indicted the exiled Prince Reza Pahlavi, along with figures affiliated with the broadcasters Manoto TV and Iran International, accusing them of helping to instigate the nationwide protests that erupted in January. Tehran has long portrayed Pahlavi as aligned with hostile foreign powers, but the announced indictment focuses specifically on allegations that he and opposition broadcasters helped fuel the unrest. It is a heavy charge, and one that turns a long-standing political feud into a formal legal case. But as always with announcements like this, it is worth looking carefully at what has been alleged and by whom. According to the Jerusalem Post, Tehran's prosecutor, Ali Salehi, announced that the indictment against Reza Pahlavi and other anti-regime figures from the Manoto and Iran International networks had been issued and would soon be sent to court. The defendants are accused of creating the conditions for the unrest of January 8th and 9th. In other words, Iran is not merely blaming street protesters for the chaos. It is pointing directly at exiled opposition leaders and foreign-based broadcasters, casting the uprising's decisive escalation as something encouraged from beyond Iran's borders. It is a framing with obvious political uses. If the protests were foreign engineered, then the grievances driving them, above all the economy, become easier to dismiss as manufactured rather than genuine. The scale of that unrest is staggering and bitterly contested. Thousands of Iranians were killed during the crackdown, but the final toll remains fiercely disputed, and the figure of 40,000 cited in one report has not been independently substantiated. Iran insists the casualty numbers are exaggerated, even as it acknowledges that serious bloodshed took place. What is clearer is how the unrest began in late December, with strikes and demonstrations by Tehran's merchants over a deepening economic crisis. That origin point matters, because it suggests the anger started not with foreign broadcasters, but with ordinary Iranians squeezed by rising prices. A detail that complicates any account blaming the whole episode on outside agitators. At the center of Iran's accusations stands Reza Pahlavi himself. The son of the last Shah, he has lived in exile for nearly 50 years, since his father was ousted in the 1979 revolution. Iranian authorities now accuse him of mobilizing protesters onto the streets from abroad, and there is at least some public basis for the claim. According to the Associated Press, Pahlavi called for mass demonstrations, and large crowds answered that call on Thursday night. For Tehran, that is evidence of foreign-directed subversion. For his supporters, it is simply an exiled figurehead encouraging a movement that already existed. The truth is that both things can be true at once. A public call to protest is real, but a call is not the same as command and control. And encouraging demonstrators is a long way from directing an uprising. Throughout all this, Iran has worked hard to project strength rather than vulnerability. During the recent war, Iranian officials claimed, according to the Associated Press, that more than 30 million people had volunteered through online forums or public gatherings to fight for the country. That figure is impossible to independently verify, and numbers like it serve an obvious purpose: to signal national unity and resolve at a moment of intense pressure. Whether or not the true number is anywhere near that high, the message Tehran wants to send is unmistakable. It intends to look unbroken. But the picture on the ground is more turbulent than that image suggests. A deadly shooting has added to tensions in western Iran, even as the fragile ceasefire with the United States holds. Gunfire in Pave County, near the border with Iraq, left 2 members of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps dead. According to Al Jazeera, the IRGC described the attack as a terrorist shooting, though officials have not identified the perpetrators or disclosed a motive and say an investigation is underway. It is another sign that Iran's border regions remain volatile and that its security forces are being tested on more than one front. Coming so soon after the ceasefire, the killings also underline how fragile calm in these areas really is, and how quickly a single incident can reignite fears of wider trouble. These events feed into a much broader clampdown. Ever since the January protests, Iranian authorities have announced a series of counterintelligence operations against what they describe as hostile espionage networks, saying the measures are meant to protect national security and critical infrastructure. All of this is unfolding against a backdrop of severe economic strain. In the past year, Iranians have endured two wars. Israel's 12-day war in 2025, followed by a joint US-Israeli assault. The first came after several rounds of nuclear diplomacy, while the second followed the breakdown of another attempt to prevent war. Tehran now insists Washington honor the commitments made in last month's Memorandum of Understanding. For ordinary Iranians, the stakes are less about diplomatic language and more about survival, whether a fragile peace can hold long enough for an exhausted economy to begin to recover. Amid that pressure, one of the more surprising developments has come on the diplomatic front. The defense ministers of Iran and Qatar have vowed to cooperate, just weeks after Iran launched missiles at the US-operated Al Udeid airbase in Doha. Qatar's deputy prime minister and defense chief, Saud bin Abdulrahman Al Thani, held a phone call with Iran's acting defense minister, and according to Qatar's Ministry of Defense, the two reviewed regional security developments and discussed areas of joint coordination. Neither side released details, but the timing, with tensions still high over the memorandum, speaks volumes about the strange logic of Gulf diplomacy. For Qatar, this is an extraordinary balancing act. During this year's conflict, Iran struck Doha several times, claiming to target the American base, while Qatar said its air defenses intercepted dozens of incoming missiles and drones, downed 2 Iranian fighter jets, and condemned the attack as a violation of its sovereignty and international law. And yet, weeks later, the two are back on the phone talking security cooperation. That ability to fight and then immediately re-engage, to keep working relations with both Washington and Tehran, is precisely what has made Qatar one of the Gulf's indispensable diplomatic players. There is movement on the maritime front as well, and it touches the world's most sensitive shipping lane. Iran's controversial proposal to charge service fees for vessels passing through the Strait of Hormuz has now found a powerful regional backer in Oman. But the detail here matters enormously, and it is easy to get wrong. Speaking to Monte Carlo Doualia, Omani Foreign Minister Badr al-Busaidi stressed that Muscat remains fully committed to the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea and opposes any toll on the right of transit passage. What he actually backed was something narrower: voluntary fees for navigational, environmental, and safety services, which he argued could improve shipping safety and pollution control, rather than a charge simply for the right to pass. Taken together, these threads describe a country under intense strain on almost every side at once. At home, Iran is prosecuting exiled opponents, cracking down on alleged spies, and trying to steady an economy battered by war and sanctions. Abroad, it is trading missiles and then phone calls with its Gulf neighbors and pressing a contested claim over the waters of Hormuz. The indictment of Reza Pahlavi is the dramatic headline, but it is really just one piece of a much larger story, that of a state determined to project total control at the very moment when its control is being tested hardest. How that tension finally resolves, at home and across the region, will shape the months ahead. Subscribe to WLA for daily geopolitical analysis.